All right, so I've been spending just so much time lately trying to figure out which of like the dozens upon dozens of Shining Force 2 ROM hacks that I can find that appeal to me the most. When I played Shining Force 1, I played one by a guy named CL. And CL has a mod for Shining Force 2 as well. Um, but it doesn't really, it looks good in a lot of ways. You have automatic counterattacks after every fight, in every little combat scene, and some good changes overall. It'd be kind of cool to have like the thematic solidarity of the same one for Shining Force 1 and 2. But there's some parts of it I didn't really feel as interested in. One thing that was interesting, but I don't necessarily want to retread in this one, is that basically there's not a steady linear progression of weapon damage. You basically just get a normal weapon, a weapon with higher defense, lower offense, and a weapon with higher offense and lower defense. And that just kind of basically, you only get a couple of those ones over the course of the game, and that probably only changes once you perform. So I looked through a bunch of them. There's a guy named Dark Claw who does a lot of them, but they apparently have some balance issues. There's one called the Shining Force Hirsute mod, which seemed quite interesting. But just generally speaking, the Return to Grans one appealed to me a lot because a lot of the rebalancing changes seem like they make sense, as well as the game also having being more familiar. There's a ton of randomizers and like battle royale mods and stuff like that, which people like a lot. But generally speaking, of the ones that are like in the featured mod tab on Shining Force Central, this one seems the most appealing. Yeah, I beat. Hey Bill. Yeah, I beat Half-Life 2. I beat Half-Life on Saturday. Take another hour. The final fight of Half-Life 1 was like crazy. Anyway, so I want to go through this similar to when I played Brave New World for FF6. I kind of want to go through this PDF this guy made, kind of go over the changes in Shining Force 2 Return to Grans as like sort of a bit of an intro. Shining Force 2 Return to Grans is a revision of the classic tactical RPG. Can I full screen this? Hit to page. That doesn't work. Is a revision of the classic tactical RPG for the Sega Genesis. This hack irons out some of the weaknesses of the original, in particular writing and balance, while also making a number of graphical improvements. It does not intend to fundamentally change the game, but instead make it more challenging and interesting while retaining the feeling of the original SF2. Okay, don't play in super difficulty unless you really crave a rather unfair challenge. The hack isn't balanced for the additional increase in damage. Most classes have been fine-tuned, some have been fundamentally changed. Master monks are noticeably worse healers than vicars now. Sorcerers are glass cannons to low MP and melee capabilities. Second, heavy attacks are rare now. Instead, many enemies inflict poison, stun, etc. This is one of the things of making status effects more effective, which has been a thing I really enjoy in a lot of like the ROM hack rebalancing of 16-bit era games. Promotion level cap is 25. Promotion level cap is 25. I mean, does that mean you have to promote at 25? Or this is what you can do afterwards? I think this means that you only go to level. I think this means you promote at level 25. Excuse me. Aura, boost, and attack have been nerfed significantly. Heal, dispel, sleep, and muddle have been improved. A few maps have been updated, exemplified new inaccessible houses in Grand Seal to give the impression of a larger town. Installation information, story dialogue. Shining Force 2 always suffered from bad writing or translation, with most of the original story being simplistic and or lackluster. I don't know why they didn't even bother giving Bowie any dialogue lines at all, since all he ever says is an incoherent babble. But maybe that's what happens when you drink soap water all the time. That's fair. Bowie's lines in Shining Force 2 were often sort of incongruous and strange. Improving the writing of the game is at the heart of this hack, and as such, about 40% of all text has been altered to various degrees. The aim was to improve the story by creating a more coherent chain of events, by making the world of SF2 appear more alive, by having NPCs often refer to your party members, and by making Bowie look less like the center of the universe. Due to the limitations of the engine and the editors, this is more of an improvement than a complete overhaul. I wasn't able to add new lines, only to replace existing ones. Return to Grand should still allow you to experience a more believable, mature, and enjoyable version of the story of SF2. There isn't much else to say about this point, except that the premise is that when Bowie roams a town, he and his party have already been around for a little while. The villagers may have met some of his friends already, who are assumed to hang out in a different quarter of town, or perhaps outside the village. Note that it is expected that you pick up all optional party members, such as Kiwi, May, or Screech, as NPCs will refer to them as well. In case you want to experience just the altered narrative experience with the original SF2 gameplay, I've created a version of this hack, limited, blah, blah, blah. The general appearance of the game remains largely the same, though I've made quite a few tweaks here and there. Some characters now have different sprites, all icon items, map, blah, blah, blah. I found the low difficulty of the original game to be one of its major flaws, as it hampered SF2's quality as a tactical game. Consequently, the general difficulty was increased notably for this hack. This is achieved by making the enemy slightly more powerful and much tougher, while also sometimes granting them extra manpower. The normal difficulty is probably halfway between vanilla SF2's normal and super now. So if normal's harder than the old normal, I think I'll probably play in hard or ouch. They say not to play in super. I probably won't play in normal. Might just play in hard. I don't necessarily need to get like wrecked for this thing. However, what actually makes this game challenging has been altered contrary to the original game. Enemies are a lot less likely to hit your party member with second attacks or critical hits. Instead, their regular damage output will be higher. Keeping your characters alive is now much more a matter of careful planning instead of luck. Difficulty increases toward the end. Having said that, the Shining Force hack is intended for an experienced audience, though who else would play such an old game anyway? The difficulty level is normal, hard, and out should provide a good challenge for most players. I do not recommend playing in super. This hack is not just simply more difficult than the original. For example, the Kraken and chess battles are still some of the more challenging fights, but compared to others, they no longer stand out that much. Unless an enemy force is an obvious leader, usually when a cutscene is related to a particular foe, such as the Death Archer in the battle before Bordeaux, most of the time it will be required to defeat all enemies in order to win the battle. A prime example for this is the battle in Polka, where the Master Mage is now just another henchman. On the other hand, some battles which didn't have leaders before now do, such as the Witch in the first battle in Parmesia or the Hobgoblin. As a rule of thumb, weaker characters such as spellcasters will usually survive one hit of a common enemy at their level, while sturdier characters will be able to survive two. One hit KO should be an exception. First off, level caps are set to 25 for unpromoted characters and 30 for promoted characters, respectively. All promotion paths remain the same, but the roles of the different classes' characters have been carved out further by changing some stats. While some characters were strictly superior to others in vanilla SF2, this hack intends to bring balance to the Shining Force. For example, Chester is no longer an inferior Pegasus Knight compared to Rick and Eric. Generally speaking, choosing between members of a certain class should now usually come down to your visual preference, not cold hard stats. I guess that's fine. Spellcasters in particular were subject to a larger number of changes due to shifts in their usefulness. Spell damage is not influenced by higher defense, and more enemies means AoE damage becomes more powerful, but longer battles exhaust MP, and so on. Swordsman is about the same. The hero. In vanilla SF2, the hero excels in both attack and defense to such an extent that it seems over the top even for the protagonist of the story. In Return to Grans, he retains most of his original qualities, but loses a chunk of defense. He is, after all, the leader of the Shining Force, and a leader should not carelessly waltz around their front lines playing target. Priests in Return to Grans have higher MP and lower attack ratings than they had before, and their spells have been changed in many ways. See the spells section for more details on this. Note that Karna has been nerfed significantly, making her no longer strictly superior to Sarah. Clerics replace the Vicar class as a promotion option for priests. They have a much larger mana pool, but are more fragile than they were in vanilla SF2. Clerics are essential healers, as they will learn the most powerful healing spells, heal 4, aura 4 throughout the game. They also retain their support spell, detox or boost, as well as blast. Master Monk. It is safe to say that Master Monks are strictly superior to Vicars in the original game. In Return to Grans, it is much more difficult to compare these two classes, as Master Monks are no longer full-fledged healers. Both their heal and blast spells are capped to level 3, and instead of aura, the fourth spell they learn is a debuff, slow, sleep, or muddle. This shouldn't discourage anyone from still using them, though, as Master Monks still have a higher movement radius and superior attack defensive ratings compared to their Cleric sisters. Due to their smaller MP pool and their lack of AoE healing, may however be difficult to have a Master Monk as the sole hero of your party. That's fair, I like that. Knights remain unchanged, some balance tweaks. Paladins are useful for tanking a moderate amount of damage thanks to their high mobility and HP, though this may take a toll on the healers due to their relatively low defense compared to sturdier classes such as Barons. All Paladins now learn Heal 1 and Detox 2, making them good complementary party members to a group with a sole Master Monk healer. Pegasus Knights trade mobility for defense. They all have slightly higher defense and agility compared to Paladins. Their movement radius has been reduced to 6, as the ability to move 6 spaces and attack from a distance of 2 squares seems quite overpowered. And just like all Flyers, they are now vulnerable to wind-based magic. Good old Jaha remains the same massive muscle we all love to send to the front lines. The same goes for Randolph. Berserker class replaces the Gladiator, which is mostly to go along with the new battle sprite. SF2's 3 dwarves now sport a slightly different outfit, complete with a sweet horned helmet. Also, their attack animation does not quite look as weird as before. Just like their predecessors, Berserkers are destined to stand in the front rows. Their stats remain largely unchanged, but they are now also resistant to magic. They'll take less damage to spells such as Blaze and are less likely to be affected by debuff spells or de-soul. Just like the rest of the dwarf classes, Barons remain largely unchanged, also true for Mr. Lemon. They are useful damage dealers and tanks, though not quite as tough as Berserkers. Mages are novice spellcasters, but when magic fails, they're used to wielding their staves in close combat. Their attack is now on par with the priest. Wizards are fully devoted to the study of the arcane. Even more than before, their specialty is damaging multiple enemies at once. Each wizard's repertoire encompasses 3 of the defensive spells: Blaze, Freeze, Bolt, and De-Soul. They also learn a debuff spell, Sleep, Muddle, or Dispel. Wizards are resistant to magic and have high agility. Due to the higher numbers and resilience of enemies, situations where they're clumped together will be more common, increasingly useful as the AoE spells. So it seems like the wizard is a little more useful, generally speaking. Sorcerers are subject to a major overhaul. Unlike the wizards in the Ivory Towers, sorcerers are used to the heat of battle. They're noticeably tougher than wizards and can also do quite a bit of damage to their staves. Generally, their magic is significantly more draining to their MP than before. Sorcerers are now wild cards. They can provide a high damage output for critical situations, but they won't be effective if you're also willing to use them in melee combat despite their relative fragility. Their attacks may now drain MP. Does that mean from them or the people they fight? Thief. Slade will gain attack faster, making him more effective before promotion. He also has learned to coat his daggers with poison and is more likely to retaliate attacks with counters. Shinobi Slade is far less overpowered than his vanilla SF2 iteration as a ninja. He loses a bunch of hit points in defense while keeping his outstanding attack ratings. He's still a heavy hitter, but leaving in the front row without protection will quickly result in his death. It's a good idea. Slade also no longer learns Katon or Raijin, which seemed like an out-of-place addition to an already strong character. Instead, the sneaky ninja may now distract or weaken his enemies by using muddle, dispel, or slow. That makes sense for the craftiness of a ninja overall, overly speaking. Tortoise, Kiwi, my favorite character. I always would play Kiwi when I play SF2, and I root for him, but it's never really, really worth it. So hopefully it's now more worth it now. The Tortoise class now boasts a minor resistance against blast magic, giving Kiwi a chance of survival against certain magic users after he's gained some levels. His HP gains have also been boosted slightly. He will die to fire spells just as fast as ever, though. Kiwi's attack is still rather low, but his weird helmet throw attacks now have a chance of confusing enemies, which make him more useful and entertaining to use. Kiwizilla benefits from a major stats increase, which boosts his defense ratings beyond anyone else, making him an excellent tank as long as there's no caster around. He gains resistance to wind magic, but fire remains his Achilles heel. Finally, Kiwi's attack now has a chance of stunning enemies, but his movement radius has been greatly reduced, cutting down his versatility. He's also much slower than before, and his fire breath is much less powerful. As a side note, his ridiculous rocket turtle attack animation was replaced by a more reasonable Hulk smash. Basic Phoenix. Turkey Peter has always been one of the most strikingly overpowered characters in Shining Force 2. He remains a strong ally, but now his attack gains with each level are up. With each level up and a less out of promotion. Once again, Phoenix Peter is a strong member of the Shining Force with a lot of good stats, however his attack and defense have been lowered. On the plus side, Peter now gains an ability, i.e. a magic spell, Phoenix Wing, which allows him to attack enemies from the distance of 2 squares. He's only able to use it once or twice per battle though, and the attack is not very powerful. Okay, Ranger, which is the Centaur Archer. Like all Centaurs, May now has a larger HP bar than the average party member at the cost of some defense. Bow Knight. May's HP bar grows even further, while her defense is also considerably lower than before. She's basically the only one of like the Centaurs. Wolfman. Geralt is even more of a beast now. His attack will now easily surpass the much more versatile Peter, making him more useful as a damage dealer, which is nice. I'll probably use him. Wolf Baron. Geralt mostly retains his original stats, which makes him one of the most potent damage dealers after the nerf of Peter. All the fur he gains with his promotion will protect him from wind and ice-based damage, however, he also makes him flammable, aka weak to fire. Birdman. Luke, Shining Force 2's poster child Birdman, was always a bit on the weak side, but due to a slight increase in his attack and a nerf to his closest rival Peter, he will now be more of a valuable companion. Bird Battler. One of the weakest classes in vanilla Shining Force 2 has been noticeably boosted and returned to Grans. Bird Battlers now have a higher attack with a significant chance of inflicting critical strikes. They're now basically flying ninjas. They are also among the first characters to take their turns due to their increased agility. Archers now have a little less HP and slightly higher attack. Aside from that, their appearance has also been changed, which makes using pre-promoted Elric less of an eyesore. Sniper, which is the upgraded Archer. Snipers move faster than Bow Knights and Brass Gunners, and they have a high chance of devastating critical hits. The trade-off for this is a loss of HP and defense compared to vanilla SF2. That makes the sniper seem much more tempting, honestly. Brass Gunners are literally tanks. Their defense has been improved quite a bit, making them a good choice if you're having trouble protecting your ranged attackers and healers, but not mind moving slowly. I'm not sure why you would want a tanky, long-range character. It doesn't really make sense to me. Unfortunately, it's also been discovered that the engines of Brass Gunners are highly vulnerable to lightning damage. Makes sense. Zinc is an ancient robot which has not been modified for ages, and for the most part, this trend continues. Just like all other mechanical entities, he now has a weakness against lightning-based attacks. He is, however, resistant to cold. Just like NPC Golems, Cloud is now weak against fire magic while supporting a minor resistance against wind. He's an excellent tank, but does not do as much damage. He may stun enemies, though. Notes. The stats of characters which join your party already promoted are set to be slightly higher than those of party members who were promoted to level 20 and slightly lower than those who were promoted to level 25. In the average playthrough, however, RNG should more or less completely randomize this. Characters who join you will now usually be on par with the average level of members of your sports. These happens here are the guys at Creed's Mansion as well as Janet, who will probably be behind the rest of the bunch. A bunch of the mods actually make it so you can recruit all 4 party members at Creed's Mansion. I'm not sure that is the case here, which I'm a little sad about because I would love to have all these guys at once, but who knows how that'll actually work. Characters who will usually be equipped with the latest in ARP weapon technology mean that, unlike before, you won't have to make a trip to the weapons trade when they join you or use Egress in the Kraken battle because you forgot to buy Luke a replacement for the toothpick he came equipped with. Yep, we've all been there. I remember that. Some characters now have the ability of inflicting status ailments. This is true for enemies as well. Enemies are tougher and come in greater numbers than before, and only a few battles can be won by killing a leader-type enemy. This means that battles will drag out longer than before, which is particularly demanding on spellcasters, and is the primary reason for most of the changes done to magic users. For example, clerics now have a larger MP pool and more cost-efficient spells. Sorcerers have become useful melee fighters, and wizards profit from a more powerful and diverse spellbook. In addition, fairy tiers are now available at some item traders in the second half of the game, and the new item Ether Essence, which also recovers MP, can be purchased even earlier. I read about this. It gives 7 MP, and you can only cast it on yourself. Healing spells. Heal has been improved to compensate for the stronger enemies, in particular the second tier will now recover 5 additional MP while retaining the range of 2, and the fourth tier is a range of 3 instead of only 1. Keep in mind that Master Monks will no longer raise their heal spell above 3. Aura. The effect of Aura has changed significantly, and now replenishes the same amount of HP that a heal spell of the same level would. The ridiculous final tier has been nerfed significantly. It will still heal every party member, but the recovered HP will be equivalent to a heal 3. That's fair. Master Monks no longer have access to Aura. Detox is now dirt cheap. Due to a high number of enemies which may inflict negative status effects on attacks, it has also become more useful. As before, level 1 cures poison, level 2 also removes stun, and level 3 to 4 unbind cursed items. I don't see the point of this, really. Buff spells. Boost is no longer the ridiculously overpowered spell it once was. It will now be limited to one target on both tiers. This also affects the Protect Ring. Attack has been renamed to Zeal. As before, is a single target spell, though its range is now limited to one square. This also affects the Power Ring. Debuff spells. Effect radius and range of all debuff spells has been increased to various degrees. Dispel, Muddle, Slow, Sleep. Blaze remains your standard wizard spell. Freeze is the same. Bolt is still the most powerful wizard spell in terms of raw damage. However, it is now more difficult to utilize due to range constrictions. Casters now require a certain distance for casting on all tiers. Blast is still exclusive to priests, master monks, and clerics. It is highly effective against flying enemies and will do subpar damage to most bulky, tanky type foes. Its large effect radius makes it a frightening weapon. D-Soul now has a much higher mana cost, giving that insta-killing an enemy is much more powerful than before. But D-Soul also has a pretty good chance to miss, so that's surprising. Just like Vanilla Shine Force 2, the damage of basic sorcerer spells, Tao, Apollo, and Neptune is being split between enemies and their effect radius. Their effective damage has been slightly reduced while their MP cost has been increased, so they got nerfed pretty hard. It was pretty useless to use a wizard when you could have a sorcerer who just did so much more damage before. P-Wing is a new spell Peter will learn, yeah. Notes. Due to the all-around higher defense of enemies resulting in a lower damage output of non-casters, damage spells will be objectively more powerful than in Vanilla Shine Force 2, even if the stats have not been changed. The two ninja equivalent spells have been removed, except for you've used the ninja katana, which I assume is one of his mithril weapons. Atlas has been removed, aside from being somewhat too powerful and being learned too late. I always load the dumb spell animation. I don't remember which one Atlas was. Items which recover MP, such as Ether Essence, a new item, see next chapter. Fairy Tears and the Mystery Staff are now less useful sorcerers due to their higher total MP and much more expensive spells. While attaining the highest spell level requires some rather tedious XP farming in the original game, the new level cap of 30 means that characters are rather likely to learn all their spells before you reach the ending. And beware, some enemies have learned new magic spells as well. Many items have been tweaked, some have been removed or replaced, a few have switched locations. A new category of wearable items has been added. Pendants can be worn by anyone and will grant a bonus to one stat while also diminishing another one. Pendants are all usually weaker than rings and have no effect when used. Antidotes now work like fairy powder. They remove both poison and sleep. I think Detox removed poison and stun. Was that correct? Fairy powder has been removed from the game. Instead, you may now purchase Ether Essence. 7 MP for the target character used only. Fairy Tears now recover 15 HP. I think he means MP here. And may also be purchased in item shops. Just like Ether Essences, they can only be consumed by the character holding them. Mithril weapons have been subject to a lot of changes. In the past, some of them have been strictly inferior to others before. Now the blacksmith's crafts should be more balanced. The general idea is that you can now just throw your mithril at the blacksmith and likely be satisfied with whatever you get, except the critical sword, which still sucks. In addition, the drop tables have been evened out. For example, when crafting a weapon for Bowie, the chance of getting either a Levanter, counter sword, battle sword, or critical sword are now equally distributed, about 25% per blade. In return, the number of mithril has been found, which can be found, has been reduced to 7. There's about 25. D-Soul is OP in the base game. The odds are really high, really. Yeah, I remember like maybe I was just used to Shining Force 1, so I didn't really like use D-Soul that often. But if it works often, I think that's good. This has been done to make the choice of whom to give a mithril weapon a more important one and to increase the viability of cursed weapons. There's also a new mithril weapon for Master Monks, the Sage Glove. The Pegasus Ring can be found in Hassan. The Angel Ring, former life ring, can be found in Mitchula's Thrine. The following items have been removed from the game, running Pimentos. And the Ostrich Pendant could now increase the movements, character by movement by 1 at the cost of 5 defense. That's cool. Shining Ball, worthless. Holy Thunder, worthless. Fairy Powder, gone. Healing items, rarely used in vanilla SF2 due to the game's low difficulty. Healing items have been overly potent early in the intro, being pretty worthless in late game. Thus, they've been rebalanced to be weaker. Okay. Since the attack of many mithril weapons has been decreased, cursed weapons are now superior in terms of raw power. This is a good idea. To compensate for this, all of them now also carry a negative stat effect. The crit up effect, which could supposedly work against you in the original game, should now always be beneficial to your party members due to a change in their stats. It should now also increase damage and/or chance of critical hits. I mean, I think that's good that the cursed weapons are the highest attack weapons. Here's all the basic weapons. I might have to keep this for reference later if they don't show this in game. Holy Staff, all the various weapons. These are all the, I think these look like all the mithril weapons. So I'll have to study this later. Quick Ring, Running Ring. So there's a Running Ring, but not a Running Pimento. And there's an Ostrich Pendant as well. Okay, got it. Demon Ring, Angel Ring, Protect Ring, Boost 1, Power Ring, Ostrich Pendant, Wolf Pendant, 15 Agility, -5 attack. It's interesting. I'm not sure who I would use that for. Maybe like a tankier character or something. Bull Pendant, +5 attack, -10 agi. I hope these things are shown on the screen, but I should be able to see it just by like hovering over the people. Monsters. All monsters are tougher and stronger than vanilla. Battles will also have a few extra enemies. The goal here was not to make the game significantly harder, but rather to provide a more consistent challenge to make the battles more interesting. A lot more monsters attacks will now carry the chance of affecting status elements. This makes antidotes and detox less useless in the original game. Detox removes stun and poison effects, while antidotes remove poison and sleep. Okay, so you can remove stuns, but I think they also said stuns are only 1 turn regardless. Poison will now afflict approximately 10% of the character's total HP. Enemies killed by poison will no longer grant experience points. Many foes now have some kind of magic resist. Tank type enemies are usually resistant to blast. Flying units are always vulnerable to blast. This includes your own party members as well. In return, resistance against wind-based magic is fairly common among tougher units. Machines are weak against lightning, while flying enemies will often take less damage from it. Okay. Name things rename, known bugs. I didn't think none of these really seem bad. The known bugs are pretty minor. They might be a little confusing during the intro. The palette of the intro sequence is messed up. General hints. Battles will play out different than before, mostly due to the stronger enemies. While the setup of the enemy army usually hasn't changed a lot, there are a few battles which feature some new AI patterns and traps. In order to max out the stats of the characters, most players like to promote as late as possible, which is level 25 in this hack. Consider promoting characters which you know you're not going to use later on, so you can benefit from their increase in power for upcoming battles. Baron Jaha's magic resistance or Monster Kiwi's stun can make a crucial difference against the enemy chess army. Many mythical weapons have very useful abilities, but as a rule of thumb, a powerful special effect now usually goes in hand with a lower attack stat. When enemies' damage seems to get out of hand, do not underestimate the land effect. This is something I usually tend to forget about when I play. Pay attention to the enemy's movement radius in order to avoid damage. Reading enemy movement is absolutely critical in the late game. Only spread out if there are casters nearby to avoid your characters being ganged up on. Opening up a character more than one attack can quickly result in casualties. If you have trouble defeating stronger enemies, try using status effects such as Slow, learned by Sarah and Slade, effective items such as Running Ring and Hyper Cannon, or Stun, attacks of Kiwi and Cloud. Muddle, Sleep, and Dispel will be less useful for bosses, but work fine in most enemies, okay? All right, so that will be fine. I'm going to keep this up so I can remember the various status effects and keep this weapon thing up. And it's time to get into the game here. I'm not sure I'm going to make that a separate video because that only took what? Actually, that was 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to make a separate video for this as the intro, and then I'm going to get into it now.